And welcome to episode 471 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Andrew Swafford.
throwback episode for the old Cinematary heads.
Just the boys.
Today's episode, we're going to be talking about movies that we saw this week in part 1. And in part 2, we're going to be kicking off our series on actor Javier Bardem. You know, fresh off of his turn, being really excited about Timothy Chalamet and Dune 2. We're gonna
the
talk
true
about,
believer.
yeah, we're gonna go take it back a little bit and go to his 2004 film The Sea Inside, which I guess was we'll get into it in the second part, but I guess was kind of like his first big, like, America take notice of him, because this was a
Did
much
America
more.
take notice? I don't know if America was watching foreign films in 2004.
No, but this one, I guess this one, and he had a small role in Collateral, which I didn't know. I thought that No Country for Old Men was his, like, big intro into the States,
I
but he
thought so
actually
too.
but he was in Collateral, and I'm like, hell, that's a great way to enter the States too.
Sure, but I'm a person who has seen and really likes Collateral, and I don't even remember him being in it.
Very small
But you
role.
kind of can't forget him in No Country for Old Men, right?
That's why people go to that. But I just
Mhm.
want to shout out Collateral whenever we can.
Oh yeah, I mean you should watch Collateral if you're listening to
So
this.
good. Anyway, let's go into the actual podcast. All right, we're gonna kick things off with a new release, and
Mhm.
Andrew, you're gonna talk about everybody's favorite young blonde actress at the moment playing a nun.
Yeah. We're talking about Sydney Sweeney and her new movie Immaculate. And it's kind of interesting, I think, that this is kind of Sydney Sweeney's movie. People talk all the time about how there aren't movie stars anymore. And I think to a large extent, it's true that like the industry has kind of moved away from movie stars being the driving force that like gets people in the theater. We're more interested in getting people in seats based on the IP that you're adapting or making your millionth sequel to.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to the theater to see Immaculate, they had all these big like digital posters up everywhere that just said like Sydney Sweeney in bigger text than the title of the movie. And this is not based on any sort of pre-existing IP. It's just, what if Sydney Sweeney was in a nun movie?
Which,
And
honestly, like, to your point about movie stars, is that's just a throwback of what if X is in the X movie. That's what we
right,
love.
exactly. So, and it's also kind of surprising that her star power has really exploded what feels like overnight. I know it hasn't actually been overnight because she's been killing it in Euphoria since like 2019. But it really does feel like just the last year or so that she's been kind of like a household name, I would say.
Yeah.
Like she just hosted SNL a couple of weeks ago. She's also in Madam Web, that like cursed Marvel movie that she and Dakota Johnson have both been like doing an apology tour for. She was in that rom-com Anyone But You with Glenn Powell, who's like the male equivalent of her in terms of just like ridiculous movie star like sex appeal.
Dude, I'm not even gonna lie. I love me some Glenn Powell. If the
I've
movie is,
heard the movie is bad, but I kind of want to watch it because they're
oh
both just so hot.
yeah, like sign me up for any movie that is, what if Glenn Powell is in blank movie? Like, I'm
Mhm.
down for it.
Yeah, I will probably watch it at some point. I also want to watch her in the movie Reality, in which she plays Reality
Yeah.
Winner. I've heard mixed things about it, but it's an interesting story, and I like the idea of her playing that part. But the main reason I wanted to go see Immaculate is that it's by a guy named Michael Mohan. I'm not sure if that's how you're supposed to pronounce his last name, but he directed Sydney Sweeney in a really, really good, really, really fun little genre flick 2 years ago. The Voyeurs. Have you seen The Voyeurs?
No, I
Zach?
remember you talking about it though.
It's so good. It's like a very pulpy, very knowing, but also very like cine literate erotic thriller. It's kind of like a throwback to the 90s style erotic thriller, but kind of with 2020s level of like, I don't know, willingness to be somewhat sexually explicit. I know that 90s erotic thrillers were also sexually explicit, but I feel like it's doing its own thing.
Yeah.
And it's also just like a really well shot, thoughtful movie about the act of voyeurism and kind of doing these Hitchcockian things about cinema as a voyeuristic art form. And it felt like the cinematography was so often communicating the ideas of the movie. And it just like, it seemed like it was helmed by somebody who really knew what they were doing. And, the trailer for Immaculate makes it seem like it's this very, back to basics, straightforward, thrilling horror story with like a great lead performance at its center. And I am sad to report that it is not that, unfortunately.
Dang.
It's mostly it's written by a different person for one, and I think that that's kind of the one of the key problems with it is that it just doesn't have that compelling of a story to it. It has a great concept, but it does not really develop that concept into drama, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
The concept is that Sydney Sweeney is playing a nun. She's traveled to this European convent, and it's an Italian convent, I believe. It's meant to kind of, I think, evoke the dynamic at the center of Suspiria,
Mm-hmm.
where you have what's her name, Samantha Harper, Stephanie Harper. What is the lead of Suspiria's
I'll
name?
look it up.
I forget. Jessica Harper, I think is her name. She's like a ballerina, American ballerina, going to Italy to study in this, big, grand, sophisticated, aristocratic feeling ballet school. But there's, some mysterious things happening, and there might be some witches and treachery afoot. In this,
In
she
a
comes
in a
to
Catholic church? No.
so yeah, so here we're going to a nunnery, a convent, and there's some treachery afoot. Um, she finds herself pregnant after being there for a very short time, despite the fact that she is a virgin. So we have the titular Immaculate Conception, but played for horror, which I think is just such a good idea.
That's a
Such a
good
good
idea.
idea to have a nun, unwillingly have to experience Immaculate Conception, and all of the ways in which you can explore the body, and people's, or like women's loss of agency when it comes to pregnancy and all that stuff. This movie is also very much calling back to Rosemary's Baby, and movies like that. So it's got, again, such a good idea, but there is just really no story here. There are all these tertiary characters. None of them really get developed. You see most of them in like one or two scenes, and almost every scene of this movie is trying to scare you. And ordinarily, that's great. That's what I go to a horror movie for. I want it to try to scare me. I don't
Good
need it
feature.
to like just be about trauma the whole time, right? It needs to be kind of like a thrilling experience. I need to experience like the affect of it.
Mm-hmm.
But um, man, when movies are just really like like manipulative and just trying to reach for like the lowest hanging fruit of like, oh, there's someone behind you, boo, all the time, like every single scene, it doesn't really have the same impact. It just feels like every scene is Sydney Sweeney wandering into a room, seeing something that's kind of unsettling, and then surprise, there's someone behind her, and like that happens over and over, and it just doesn't seem like you get that much of a sense of who this character is. None of her relationships really develop. A lot of people die like shortly after their character gets introduced. Also, like they don't explore the space at all. Like, one thing that's so cool about Suspiria is that studio, that big ballet studio that just looks like this impossible, like, art project. It is just incredible to like behold the corridors of this space, perfectly lit and, like, symmetrically shot. I don't feel like I have a sense of this convent at all. Like, not the geometry of it, not the aesthetic of it. It's all shot like very dim, and yeah, I didn't really feel like there was much of a movie here. It was trying to, be up and engaging all the time, but at the expense of, like, actually telling a story that I gave a shit about. So I was very bored, and then, all of a sudden it just kind of starts ending, and I'm like, are we already to the end of this movie now? Like, what has even happened? uh, and yeah, I just very, very disappointed in this. Disappointed that this director has kind of, like, produced something that feels so much less interesting and like, impactful than the Voyeurs. Disappointed that, like, this concept didn't feel like it got the treatment that it deserved. That Sydney Sweeney, who's, like, having this big star moment, is not in a better movie. Um, but I do like her, and I still do think that this director could turn out some interesting things. I'm going to keep watching his stuff. But man, disappointed in Immaculate.
It's, speaking to our person we're going to be following in our latest series. It's kind of tough to do the Immaculate Conception but horror when you have like Mother, which
So
Javier
true.
Bardem co-stars in.
I'm gonna rewatch Mother tomorrow with
I
a
haven't s-
friend of the pod, Cam.
I haven't seen it since it came out, and I do kind of want to rewatch it.
I haven't either, but I'm excited to check it back out.
Nothing.
That movie is unhinged.
I think it's less that I didn't like it. It's more just like the experience I had watching it in the theater was so perfect because people were responding
Yeah,
to
yeah.
to the movie like audibly, and it was. I'm like, I mean, I'm gonna do that, and I'll laugh at myself, but that I need some other reinforcement from others.
Do you remember the trailer that first advertised Mother? There was, like, big letters on the screen, one word at a time. You will never forget where you were when you saw Mother.
I did.
It's true.
It's true. He got it. Ugh. I saw that. I don't want to get on a whole tangent. Darren Aronofsky is coming out with a new movie starring Austin Butler, where he plays like a retired baseball player who now is like an action person. Again, like I'm down for that. That sounds great. Very Michael Mann esque. I'm into it.
What's it
It
called?
it
Postcard from Earth?
maybe
No.
they just announced it a couple days ago.
Okay.
Um, I was on a whole Austin Butler thing because he's possibly playing Val Kilmer's character from Heat and Heat 2,
Mm.
and I can't tell you how excited I am for a film project than I am for Heat 2. If it's Adam Driver and Austin Butler and it's Heat 2, damn man, like make it 4 hours long. Like screw all the people who couldn't watch Killers of the Flower Moon. Like I want it 4 hours long, no bathroom breaks. You just got to be in there with it.
So Austin Butler is playing the De Niro role, and Adam Driver's playing the Pacino role.
Yes. Wait,
Hmm.
no. Austin Butler's playing the Val Kilmer role.
Val Kilmer role.
Yeah,
Okay,
Adam
gotcha.
Driver I think is doing Pacino. I don't know who's doing the. Yeah, so Austin Butler. So it's written and directed by Caught Stealing follows Hank Thompson, a burned out former baseball player, as he's unwittingly plunged into a wild fight for survival in the downtown criminal underworld of 90s New York.
Speaking of Darren Aronofsky, how do you feel about the fact that he's making an Elon Musk biopic?
Don't love it, but let's see if it actually like happens. I feel
We'll
like
see if it happens for
I feel
sure.
like
I
he's a
feel like,
director who like sometimes it doesn't happen.
and also anything involving Elon Musk, I feel like Elon Musk might ruin or try to shut down.
Yeah. Anyway,
But I think that there's hope that you could make a biopic completely taking the piss out of Elon Musk. Um,
man,
but I
you
don't
probably
know.
have Adam McKay sitting at home just like you know touching himself to the fact that he could come up with something that would just be awful. It would be
Yeah,
so bad.
it was awful. Yeah.
Anyway, now that we've gone on a tangent, all right, moving on to I'm going to talk about 2004's The World,
Mm.
which every time I say that reminds me of the Norm Macdonald joke when he's just like, in Germany was like, we're gonna fight somebody, and we were like, who are you gonna fight? And they went, the world. And then they did it again. They had another war. You know who they picked the fight with? The world. So this
Man.
is one of the early films from Jia Zhangke. I want to say it's his first or one of his first roles for her with Zhao Tao, his wife. And this one takes place. It's a cool concept. That's what kind of got me to watch it. Is she plays like a dancer who I assume this is a real place in Beijing, but it's called World Park, and I like that the letterboxed description, which calls it a bizarre cross pollination of Las Vegas and Epcot Center, which is an apt like way to describe it. Like
Hmm.
um, Zhao Tao, I forgot which country she's doing a dance from at the beginning, but like at some point she's doing like a more Japanese style dance. At one point she's doing like a more Indian style dance. Like she's like doing they have this like central performance with like all of these, as you can imagine, like these really extravagant lights and effects and all this stuff that she like is a part of. But then you like walk around the park and there's like a smaller version um of like the Eiffel Tower, of like London Bridge, of Big Ben. At one point, so this is 2004. At one point, they have this like little small mini Manhattan with the twin towers, and the guy's just like, look, on September 11th, America lost their twin towers. We still have ours, or something along those lines. Which you're just like, what a chaotic line to say. like it was like just a deeply chaotic line. Um, and so you have her. She's one of the many characters that you're kind of following in this movie, all taking place in like this like bizarro like Disney World Epcot Center Las Vegas thing. Like it's this kind of this bizarre space that they're living in. And mostly you follow her and her boyfriend, who is a security guard. You have a number of other people who you're kind of following along with. um you follow her security guard boyfriend. Follows on a long line of Jia Zhangke movies with Zhao Tao, where she just has a shitty boyfriend and probably needs to break up with him. But yeah, I don't know. I've been on a Jia Zhangke kick. When I watched All of Us Strangers, they had a couple Pet Shop Boys songs in it, and then I
Mhm.
was listening to Pet Shop Boys, and then I was remembering Go West, and then I was like, I need to rewatch Mountains Made Apart. Side
Mhm.
note, it still slaps.
Absolutely.
Um, and you get teary eyed whenever you're watching her dance at the end. It's wonderful. Really, any Jia Zhangke movie where Zhao Tao is dancing is a plus movie. Like, just a great movie. Um, but uh, but yeah. So then I watched that, and I need to rewatch Ash's Purest White. But I had this one saved on my Criterion Channel list for like a long time.
I feel like if you're going through a bunch of them, you should save Ash's Purest White for last because it's kind of
Yeah.
quoting so many things from his earlier movies. It feels like it would have more resonance if they were a little bit more fresh.
Yeah, and I want to rewatch Touch of Sin. I've watched it, but
Mm,
it didn't
yeah.
really sync with me that much, so I need to rewatch that one. But anyway, this one, I saw one letterbox review that talks about it. It's less like um like you watch like Mountains Made Apart, which is like in Ash as Pure as White, and those are like ostensibly political movies, like speaking
Mm.
to the growth of China at this period of time. And this movie is as well. It doesn't feel as like overt as that. It's just kind of what you kind of have is like China straddling the line between um it's starting you're starting to see the influx of like Western culture and in American culture flowing into it. And so you kind of have a mix between like old China and new China. Like Zhao Tao and a lot of the women that she's with, they have cell phones. You can kind of see there is this kind of like battle between them, less for like attention but more, they're all of these characters for the most part are on this like one socioeconomic stratosphere, and they're all trying to kind of break out of that. A good example of that is like you have this one character who very much is like one of the dancers with her. You see her a couple times. She kind of does have like this like small air of superiority over others. Like she's hanging out with people, but also somewhat distant. Who, later on in the movie, you see her getting into a car with like the owner of the park, and then like two scenes later, she's being announced as like the supervisor for all the dancers and stuff like that. And like and then there it kind of creates this tension between Zhao Tao's character and her, because she's looking at her kind of going like I understand the choices that you made to like get to this point, but it's all in favor of like striving to like break out of this level of class that they're all in. um and so by that, so like I said, it's not as like overtly political as some of his other movies, but I think that you still kind of have that insight into a like a rapidly changing China.
I would say
um
his movies aren't usually that overtly political. It's more of like a thing that's in the background, but it's a background element you can't help but notice, right?
yeah, this one, I guess this one is like less ambitious in terms of like, you're not it's over the course of like a number of months, and so it's less like trying to map like like you think
Time,
of like Mountains Made Apart, like just how
right?
time has changed this like small these three people, but also the town that they're in. This one is just more people, people with not much money trying to kind of figure it out from there. I wouldn't even say like break out of it necessarily. Like Zhao Tao's character, it very like in line with a lot of other characters that she has, is very much just like happy to be here. She's very just
Mm,
like, I'm just enjoying life. Um, but then you also have like these other characters. At one point, a group of like Russian dancers joins the troupe, and her character, Zhao Tao's character, who's named Tao actually in the movie, um, like befriends one of the Russian dancers, and the dancer talks to her about how she, her family's back in Russia. She has two kids. There's just less opportunities for somebody in her line of work to like make money to send home there, and so that's why she's like they've like moved to China and other places to like perform. But then that clearly, isn't enough for her, so she ends up leaving, and you meet her later on in like a nightclub where she's not like a stripper or anything, but she's definitely like a type of like escort in
mm,
in this nightclub for higher end clients, because you see Tao and a number of her friends are there with like these very like typical like Chinese businessman that you kind of run into in movies. And like the one guy is just like pretty much going like, hey, like let's just forget all this, let's jump on my plane, let's like go to Hong Kong, and like you're my girl now. And she's just like, no. um and so I don't know, it's a subtler movie than a lot of his other movies, but I really, her central performance is so great. You kind of and you as you watch like these different characters trying to like, you can see people, a lot of a lot of these characters have come from like the suburbs of in China, outside of like Beijing or Hong Kong or something like that, and are coming into the cities to like find work because they're there's two characters who came from the same village, I think, as her boyfriend, and you know pretty much their reasoning is like, yeah, we're just trying to find somewhere where we're gonna make a lot more money. And so it's just kind of, you're getting a lot of that throughout this movie.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really liked it. I can't say like the song, you're not getting a Go West moment in this one. The songs are solid, but I think in terms of like if you're a Jia Zhengke fan, it's worth checking out.
Yeah. And if you're not a Zha Zhangke fan, you should consider
You
becoming a Zha
should just
Zhangke
Yeah,
fan.
you should just like start with Mountains Made Apart
Mhm.
and then just work your way around. It's great. He's fantastic.
I wanna see Platform.
Yeah. I'm so like on a whole other thing. I just finished watching um Expats, which is on Amazon. It's Lulu Wang's thing that she did
Oh,
after
yeah.
her
They
farewell.
played the first episode or 2 at TIFF, and I was gonna go see it until I learned it was a TV show.
Yeah, not a great show. Not good. Um but it's so like it's set in Hong Kong, and it's, and like, not that Lulu Wang does a bad job or anything. Like she shoots it pretty well, but like there's just so much, there's such a different energy and a different like understanding of like the city, and like from like Zhazhenka or Wong Kar Wai.
Mhm.
It feels very much like an Amazon production.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I was thinking about. I was just like, man, this is so much better than that boring show. That Nicole Kidman, I don't know. Not I love you, Nicole, but not your best work.
I feel like I saw a trailer for something else with Nicole Kidman that looked horrid. Uh,
Yeah,
Hold on, let me see what
I
she
think,
got coming up.
yeah, she I blame it more
Oh,
on
well,
the
the
script.
new Aquaman, that looks really bad.
Yeah, man, she's getting a check there. I don't blame her on that. Yeah, get your bank. It's fine. Yeah, no, it's not. I blame it more on the script. It needs a lot of work. Anyway, this isn't a TV, or at least a bad TV discussion here.
We
The
only talk
World.
about good TV on Cinematary.
Yeah, The World. It's on Criterion Channel. Check it out. Good one. The last movie I'm going to talk about, because it somewhat plays into our next movie, is Problemista, which comes from Julio Torres, who I'm not super familiar with. I didn't
Isn't it a
realize
debut?
it is. But he did he did the show on HBO that I've seen like on HBO but have not watched, called Los Espookies, that I've heard is pretty good. And then he also was a writer, was or still is, writer on SNL. And
Hmm.
his most famous sketch that he wrote was the papyrus sketch for Ryan Gosling. If you're familiar with that one, where Ryan
I
Gosling,
think I have seen it, but I
it's the one
forgot.
where he becomes obsessed with the font from Avatar.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But yeah, so this is his debut feature. He wrote and directed it. It's produced by Emma Stone, among others. And Julio Torres' character's name Alejandro. He is an aspiring toy designer, and you have like these like break little small breakout moments where he like, it's like he has an idea and he's writing down the idea for the toy, and they're really like great little like stupid toy ideas. Like he has one where it's like Cabbage Patch Kids, but they all have cell phones that are like sewed onto their hands because they're just they're too obsessed with the digital world to interact with you. um and like and things like that, like they're really great. And So he's an aspiring toy designer, but he has this job where um not even like celebrity or rich people, but art, like mainly artists who want to preserve their bodies, who want to freeze their bodies to wake up into the future, can do so at this facility. And they like drink like a fluid thing, and then it like their body like freezes up, and the people come and like put them in this tank, and then just like leave them in this building and like in this like whatever organization it is. And Alejandro works there as like a person who just keeps an eye on Tilda Swinton's character, Tilda Swinton's character, who's Elizabeth, her husband, Bobby, played by RZA, um, who he was a famous, or not a famous artist, but a well-known artist who was obsessed with painting eggs. And so he has all these like different egg paintings, and Alejandro accidentally like bumps into the like plug and unplugs the machine for like a couple seconds, and like one of the people who works there like walks by and saw him do it and like unplug it and plug it back in. And so he ends up getting fired. And why that screws up things for him is that he's from El Salvador and is there on a work visa, and so he has a month in order to find somebody to sponsor his work visa, or he in this world, like the person just like evaporates. Like if their month they have like a they have a ticking clock, and then they just evaporate if they're unable to find a place
Is that the
to sponsor
only
them.
like magical realist element in the movie?
I mean, I just described two deeply magical realist things in here.
Sorry, I think I blanked.
There's little surrealist elements to it.
Mm.
It's kind of it definitely opens that way, because it opens with like these like opening credits, which I really appreciated. A good set of opening credits. I was like, this is nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's all like inspired from Salvador Dali. It's kind of fun and nice. The movie's narrated by Isabella Rossellini. Um,
Hmm.
but so like his plan in order to get a sponsorship on his work visa is to work for Elizabeth, the Tilda Swinton character, who is like this deeply erratic outcast who used to be an art critic but then fell in love with RZA, and now is just like kind of all over the place. I don't know the best way to describe her, because it's kind of one of those, you just kind of like have to like watch her. It's great. It's on, like, she's a deeply frustrating character that's endlessly entertaining to watch.
Seems
Um
manic from the
Super
trailer.
manic, like, and like you can tell like Tilda Swinton's having like a hell of a time with it. Um and but it's just very manic, like it's constantly thinks people are after her, people are, trying to get her, trying to like deny Bobby's work with his egg paintings, things like that. She keeps like yelling about her former assistant before, Alejandro, who she said was constantly doing drugs and coke and drinking on the job. And her obsession is that Alejandro uses the program FileMaker Pro to upload the database of Bobby's paintings into that. Um, and FileMaker Pro, which she refers to as the Cadillac of spreadsheets, um, is the only thing you can use. And they keep going, why don't you use Google Sheets? And she's like, no, I have FileMaker Pro. And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the rest of the movie is him. Her deal with him is, hey, like if we get a show of his paintings, I will sponsor your work visa. Um, it's a deeply flawed movie, but for a debut, it's pretty fun. I think it has like some good moments. It has a lot of just little magical realism, like we were talking about, bits. Like the best one easily is him going to Craigslist to find like odd jobs that he can get paid in cash for. And whenever he goes to Craigslist, what is the actor's name? I think Larry Owens, who I've seen on a number of TV shows. He's like this like ethereal beast that like is made up of all these like lost objects and like job postings and stuff, who like is in this kind of like nether sphere, like multiverse kind of place that he like goes to, and he's like constant like whispering, he's like, Craigslist, do you need jobs? Odd jobs, walking the dog naked, like, and it's like those are kind of fun. Like it's creative, it's silly. I like it. Um And Julio Torres is just kind of gives a very likable performance. He has he just kind of has like this I don't know if this is how he normally speaks, but like this kind of speech pattern that is that's very funny. Um and I think that like you can tell I think he does a good job of putting a lot of energy into it, and never feels like it's too much. Like he's doing a lot of different things, really trying to kind of make something different, but it's not like overloaded with a lot of ideas. It's not overloaded with like trying to like um just impress you. It feels very like contained in itself. It's just kind of a debut feature that could use like some ironing out. But
Mm.
I don't know. He seems to be a really cool voice. I'll be curious to see what he does next. If it means like more TV, more movies. Yeah, it was a pretty lighthearted, fun, like pretty relatively insightful movie. Like in terms of like it's a very for something that's kind of tackling the like immigration and the visa system and like people coming to America and trying to make ends meet. Like I think he captures that in a very genuine way that doesn't feel like it's preaching to us, and it doesn't feel like it's just kind of being laborious in that to like it's pretty lighthearted and funny. Like there's a lot of the magical realism like back home with like his mother's art and like kind of how she's created this like special world, the special space for him, and then he's thrust into New York City. But yeah, it's in theaters now. I mean, I recommend checking it out if you're looking for something, and Godzilla versus Kong: The New Empire doesn't really strike your fancy.
Don't you mean Godzilla X
X
Kong:
Con, I'm
The
sorry,
New Empire? Also, didn't
I
you
forgot
say
they
that
got together.
there was something in this movie to do with doctor assisted suicide?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're like drinking this liquid and freezing themselves before death. Yeah, so it's kind of, I mean, like they wake up in the future, but it's you're going on the whole the surrealist bent of that. But I mean, they're just kind of killing themselves, to be honest. He
Hmm.
like RZA does this because he has like a terminal disease and doesn't want to just die that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, Problemista. It's a good time. We're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna stay on that topic of assisted suicide, and we're gonna talk
You know
about
it.
the sea inside in part two after this.
Sure.
And we're back with part two of episode 471 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to be kicking off our Javier Bardem series with 2004's The Sea Inside. Written and directed by Alejandro Amanibar. The film stars Javier Bardem, Belen Rueda, Lolo Duenas, Mabel Rivera, and Celso Bugalo. The Ramon San Pedro is a Spanish ship mechanic and part-time poet who has left a quadriplegic after a diving accident. This film tells the true story of San Pedro's 30-year battle for the legal right to end his own life. He develops close relationships with his long-term lawyer, Julia, and his friend Rosa, who tries to convince him that his life is worth living. Despite his situation, Ramon manages to inspire those around him to live life to the fullest. Somehow, since the story takes place later in San Pedro's life, with the exception of flashbacks to the accident, taking on the role required Bardem to undergo a startling physically transformation, through the aid of prosthetics. The whole process took Bardem 5 to 6 hours every morning. He told IGN, "quote I'd go there at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd start shooting at 11 until 10 p.m. There was only one piece, which was the nose. The rest was like a liquid to age the skin. When I first saw myself, because you are always concerned about the makeup work, especially when you are going to do a character movie instead of an action movie. I'm playing a character confined to bed," he told the BBC. "We actors always say how difficult and physically demanding a role was, and give me a break. It's only a movie." I guess the only difficult thing was relaxing and trying to think of yourself, as Ramon said, as a living head in a dead body. So you put your whole intention in the voice or in the eyes. The rest doesn't exist. It's a work of concentration more than anything. Um, Great answer for actors. Amenabar, the director on San Pedro's fame in Spain. We all knew him from the television and his public battle with the Spanish courts to end his life. And when he finally died in 1998, he became hugely famous. But I never thought I could make a movie about his life. I just got his poetry book to see how he wrote, which impressed me. Such a philosopher. Then I found out about San Pedro's life, about his relatives, and how all of these women fell in love with him. Began to realize how incredible he was and that his story could make a brilliant movie. Bardem said it was tough to leave the character behind, telling the BBC, "Not really, but it's not so bad that you want to. When you play Ramon San Pedro, you don't want to put that person away. You want to live with that guy as long as you can because that guy is telling you some things that are going to make you grow. Not as an
I don't
actor,
want to live with that guy personally.
not as an actor, but as a person. That guy is putting you in a place where you're having to face things you don't normally want to face, like death, love, and truly a sense of love. Are we able to love without possessing? That's the question, I guess, in this movie." Um, Bardem told the BBC in 2004 that he would be open to making more movies in America. Quote, I don't really care where movies come from as long as they're worth making. There are so many movies and it's a waste of time and a waste of money. Basically, movies are made with what it costs the external debt of all Africa. So sometimes you go
Wait,
fuck
what?
it. So sometimes you go fuck it. Is this worth it? And they're not. It's what they call entertainment, but I'm not entertained by those movies. I'm bored. This is said by the recent star of Lyle Lyle Crocodile from 2003.
Man, I'm so looking forward to all the Javier Bardem interview quotes throughout the series. I didn't know he was such a wild interview.
Yeah, I'm like, hell yeah. Like I was the BBC interview he did, that's the one that came from. I'm just like, this guy is just a fun time.
Yeah.
The New York Times, 2004, as the camera restlessly circles the sky and the ocean, taking in the radiance of northern Spain, the sea inside, the story of a quadriplegic activist fighting for the right to die, struggles to transcend the disease of the weak genre to which it belongs. Yet there is no escaping the fact that the true story of Ramon San Pedro, a former ship's mechanic seeking a final exit after 3 decades of agonizing immobility, is defined by its themes. To its credit, the movie avoids becoming a formulaic dialogue that pits religion and secular cheerleaders against one another in pre-digested arguments. Even so, the characters, some of them composites, often feel like schematic formulations intended to balance the story. And the deepest philosophical questions posed by euthanasia are only glancingly addressed, most often in Ramon's bitterly ironic remarks. The film fails to convey the claustrophobic terror experienced by a man who called his book Letters from Hell. And Roger Ebert in 2004 said, "What we see in the sea inside is fiction based on the final months. His lawyer, Julia, is herself suffering from a degenerative disease, and he feels that will make her more sympathetic to his cause. They fall in love with each other. The local woman, Rosa, certainly loves him. His family loves him and doesn't complain about the burden. His brother, in fact, is adamantly opposed to euthanasia. Ramon waits in his bed, smiles, is charming, and figures out how this thing can be made to happen. Bardem and Alejandro Amenabar, the film's director, are adamant that they do not believe everyone in Ramon's position should die. This is simply the story of one man. Yes, and on those terms, I accept it. It was moved by the humanity and logic of the character." On that note, let's talk a little bit about the sea inside. I don't agree with any of those reviews, to be honest. I found this to
Yeah.
be a bore.
Yeah.
Um, I
It is
found
so dull.
Ramon to be a big ol' asshole
Absolutely.
who sits there on his little throne and just like just completely sends like these really smug pseudo philosophical remarks to all these people who like have to listen,
Yeah.
and it's just like,
He emphasizes that, like, "What are you gonna do to me? Are you gonna, like,
yeah, you're
tie
gonna
me to
kill
the
me.
bed more?" Yeah. So he can just be as much of a jerk as he wants, and that's mostly
Yeah,
what the movie is. I don't really understand why everyone is, like, has their desire to live just renewed by being around this guy? Is it just that they have to convince him not to want to kill themselves so much that they themselves convince themselves to enjoy life? Because his presence is not, it's not really pleasant.
But the director's right though. Like he's super unpleasant, but man, that guy is just swimming in babes. Like just
Yeah,
women just falling over themselves for this man
absolutely.
who like each time he meets them for the first time is just a grade A asshole to them. And then
And
they're like,
even
you
in his
know,
backstory, he says, there's this woman, she was the love of my life. And she said something ridiculous
told her
about
to
wanting to
fuck
marry
off.
me, and I told her to go home and rethink your life.
Yeah, it's I don't know. So like you kind of go into this movie and it does very much like have um like a like the music swells, like you're
Mhm.
just like you're supposed to like really just be swept away by his whatever and
All these
you know,
shots of the sea,
yeah, he has this like beautiful like window outlook towards like the mountains in northern Spain.
which many of
Um
those window views looked like um, desktop wallpapers to me. I did not believe that there was actually
like the
an
little
ocean outside.
like the little Windows thing's gonna be bopping around as like a
Yeah, yeah.
screensaver. Um, yeah, it's and so then and it's just kind of like initially I was just like, all right, this guy's a little terse, this little rough around the edges. But
Mhm.
then this movie is what 2 hours long.
It's over 2 hours long.
Yeah, and
2 hours and 5 minutes
so
long.
after like 30 to 45 to an hour into this, you just get tired of them. Like
Yeah.
because because every scene is somebody walking in there and him giving them this like philosophical diatribe and just being an asshole. And 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 like you I feel bad because you have like his sister-in-law is like busting her ass to take care of this guy and
Mhm.
he you have and then his nephew like you can tell like really like moved by him like looks up to him and he's a jerk
But
to
his
him.
relationship is just Javier Bardem bosses me around.
Yeah.
He just
His
does what I
dad
say.
his dad's a sad old man who just kind of sits there going like and
Yeah.
then his brother's yelling at him. I don't it's just a bad time.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, and like I think you're supposed to feel sympathetic for him because of his condition, and after a while, I didn't. And after a while, I was like, "Let this man do what he wants to do," because I'm tired of it.
Yeah, like you said, every scene does feel really repetitive, and like it always starts with somebody trying to connect with him or like tell them how much they love him or convince him to live or whatever. And he always finds a way to make them feel like an asshole. He like
Yeah,
takes something that they say and he like twists it around or like
yeah.
sets them up to say something that you could
Fucking
kind
hate
of
those
see
people.
as offensive in some way if you squint at it. And they end up, running out of the room crying because he's just such a jerk.
Yeah,
And you're stuck in a room like there's because he can't move and the story doesn't really have anywhere else to go. Like all this movie is just one scene after another of that. And yeah, it's really tiresome. I agree.
yeah.
I was bored 15 minutes in.
Well, I was like hoping maybe it'll change, and it didn't. And I was by the time like I was super checked out by the time we were getting to the end of this, and I was just like, just I know how this is gonna end. Just like let's get to it. At this point, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Um, yeah, it is very formulaic. Like every scene is somebody coming in, him picking a fight with them,
Yeah.
and them leaving either sad or angry. And like but unless it's one of the two hot women he's bringing in, and
But those
then
scenes are all the same too, in that like they they say something that kind of suggests that they're interested in him or vice versa.
mhm,
And then like they almost kiss, and then he's like, "So will you help me kill myself?"
Yeah. He literally has the line I'll know the person who truly loves me because they'll help me kill myself, and I'm
Yeah,
just like, fuck, man.
yeah.
And that's how the lady she finally just is like, yeah, like that what you want? All right, man,
I
let's
love
go.
you, so that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah.
He's just a bad time. Um, he's just a bad time. I don't know what to tell y'all.
There are a
Uh,
couple of scenes that kind of break from the monotony of the movie. Like there's a scene where he has a dream that he gets up and walks around and then flies outside, and you just have like this really like high speed drone footage. They're probably not drone footage. This probably predates drone cameras.
that was real strong, like Windows screensaver energy. Also,
Yeah, it looks really cheap and unconvincing, for sure. There's also the scene, probably my favorite scene of the movie, is when that priest who goes on TV to talk
oh
about
yeah,
how he really just wants to kill himself because his family hasn't been loving enough to him.
yeah.
The priest comes over and is also a quadriplegic, so he's in a wheelchair, and they can't get the wheelchair up the stairs to see Javier Bardem, which I also wonder, like, why is he upstairs?
Yeah, like why did you put him? Which you asked that, and then you spend 10 minutes with him, and you're like, I get it. I don't want him to leave that room. Like, just leave him there.
But because the guy can't go up there, he like sends a little assistant up to like send a message, and then they end up having a debate back and forth with the assistant just running back and forth up and down the stairs.
That is pretty good. Yeah,
And then culminates with them just deciding, oh, I can actually hear you from where I'm sitting, so why don't we
we'll
just
just
yell at each
shout.
other across from the house.
Yeah, the scene where they show him actually like suffering the injury is also like not really interesting. It's a different thing. So like
Mm-hmm.
he and I was reading when I was reading the interviews for notes. They actually like shot that in like that's an actual part of like a beach that they
Hmm.
shot that scene in.
Cool.
But it's a very jarring scene because he just he just like goes going in and jumps in the water and like goes to the bottom, just whack, just hits
Yeah.
his head, and then like like is immobile and like floats to the top. Um,
Which you
but
see again after he actually kills himself. Um,
mhm.
I'm not totally sure what I'm supposed to feel while looking at those two things juxtaposed with one another. Do you
Well,
think that the director wants you to feel like happy or satisfied after this guy dies?
I was personally because he's annoying. I was, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what I'm supposed to feel. Yeah, because like so like the last scene, I'll spoil it because you don't need to watch it, listeners. Um, he like takes like it was a powder, like they put the powder in like the water and he drinks the water, which is
Mhm.
also no offense, but like really funny because he has like a straw and he's like sitting there like like sucking the straw and that kills him. And I'm like, I don't know, the
Well,
straws
what
are
else is he
funny.
supposed to do? He
Straws
doesn't
are
have a
funny.
hand.
Straws are funny. I'm like, why does he? It would have been better if it was like a bendy straw.
Or
He
like one
just
of the ones with like a spiral in it.
yeah, and he's just like licking. He's like, and it like, is going in the loops, and then he dies.
Man, this is a real guy we're talking about right now.
Not him, like the Javier. I'm gonna preface the Javier Bardem character. I'm sure this guy was probably way nicer. I don't. I just
Oh, I
they just
believe it. There's a picture on Wikipedia of a statue, and he's like smiling. He
yeah.
seems
He
nice.
was probably a nice dude. For whatever reason, they just decided to make him a grade A asshole, which makes sense because he's like talking about less like adapting his like his life story, but also like his poetry. And so maybe it's just an adaptation of his poetry that this guy just didn't understand.
I wonder if the poems read in the movie are actual poems by the guy, because some of them
Probably.
I did not like. Um, I kind of liked the last one, but um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but no, the last scene is so he drinks the water with the cyanide that kills him, and you watch him kind of like you watch him die, and then it cuts to yeah, it's the scene again. But he had talked before in the movie about how like Kia was sitting there in the water, drowning practically, and like he was just kind of hoping he would drown, and then his brother pulls him out, which saves him.
Mhm.
So I don't know what I'm supposed to feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think on a theoretical, philosophical, legal level, I think I agree that like people should have the ability to end their own life with
Mhm.
the assistance of a doctor. It's not something that I can get too enthusiastic about. It's not something I can
No,
imagine myself like going to public protests for or anything like that. Um, the movie does in a way that I think I appreciate like dwell a whole lot on the way in which people who love the suicidal person are affected by a suicidal ideation.
yeah,
Like, um, you really get the sense that nobody in his life wants him to do this. Like
no,
the scenes with his father, I think, are maybe the most heartbreaking. There's a scene where his father says, like, the only thing worse than having a son die is having a son
like,
wish, or losing a son is, I forget the actual
well, yeah,
language of it,
the
but
crux of it is like having a son who like wants to kill himself, pretty much.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah. And it just seems like everyone is so defeated and at a loss and emotionally tapped by this experience. But yeah, and like that's why I'm asking, like, do you think that we're meant to be satisfied or happy at the end of it? Because the only person who really wants this to happen is him, and
yeah,
he's just like such a distasteful person to be around for the entire movie. um
yeah. I wish I wish we got a little bit more variety other than just him sitting in the bed, to be honest. Like I wish there was a little,
I
like,
wish we
honest
got more courtroom stuff.
yeah, like more courtroom stuff, more like even like some more of like him prior to the accident. Like I think
Hmm.
I think the movie could have just used some variety other than like we said, like just repetitive scenes of people coming into the room and him, belittling them with some point that he has, and then them
Hmm.
leaving in anger or sadness. It's like we just needed to mix up the rotation a little bit, and it does a little bit, like we talk about the dream sequences and things like that, but like for the most part it's that. And like,
Hmm.
yeah, to your point, I'm much more sympathetic to like a lot of the side characters. Like his sister-in-law is like a really interesting character, as somebody who,
Hmm.
like, yeah, she disagrees, but like has been somebody who has been standing with him this entire time. Like his brother doesn't have a lot of like speaking scenes, but when he does, like whenever he's like getting really angry at him, it's because he talks so little. It's
Yeah,
impactful.
that guy's
um
just like bubbling over with anger and disapproval of everyone's like enabling of this guy.
yeah, and even just more of a journey into somebody, because like you have the one woman who you meet at the beginning, who like works for the organization that's like kind of helping him
Hmm.
along,
Hmm.
and you get and like she has a whole thing where she's like involved in the process, but then like she marries the like paralegal, and like has this whole other thing that kind of like has a kid, like has
Hmm.
this whole other life that happens at the same time. But I wish we got more, especially you get a little bit more of the interiority of the lawyer who he's with, but less so Rosa, who like is the woman who like eventually like
Hmm.
is like, I love you, I will help you do this. Um, she's very like sequestered to, I've had, like, I'm just kind of like, she just kind of seems like I'm kind of obsessed with you.
Yeah, she only
Like,
exists in montages and in scenes where they're negotiating their relationship. I don't really feel like I know that much about who she is as a person.
yeah, she's not really given much. She's not given much to be, other than this person who like comes to him a little adrift. He's a jerk to her, and then she
Hmm.
comes back for whatever reason. And yeah, then she just exists in scenes where they're, he's trying to negotiate with him to live. He's like, he tells her, like, he gives like some like long line. She's just like, all right, whatever. But yeah, I wish, if like, it's for a 2 hour and 10 minute movie, like I feel like there could have been more done with the people around him, since he
Mhm.
is just so one note.
And I don't really feel like I get much interiority on him either. Like I just hear him have these debates and like petty arguments with people. But
Yeah.
and I guess there's the scene at the beginning where it establishes this idea that he doesn't think that his life has dignity,
Hmm.
but it doesn't ever really go deeper than that. I don't feel like there's any sense of like psychological realism in this story. And for a story called The Sea Inside,
Hmm.
I feel like I'm not getting much of his inside mental experience.
Yeah, and I haven't read any, like, I haven't read his book of poetry or anything like that. But just judging from some of the interviews and reviews, like, it's a pretty, like, there's like an anger there, and like I
Mhm.
never really get like anger from it. Like it's just kind of like,
I don't know. He seems like a pretty angry person to me.
yeah, but it's like this kind of like know-it-all energy, it's like he's never like angry at the person. He's just like intellectually superior to them, and like
Mm,
that's what, just like, I'm like, honestly, I wish he was just like irrational and angry, but he like is constantly like this intellectually superior, like very like, I've thought this out, like, I've, kind of, I'm just like I wish you were just like irrational and angry, because
mm,
it's an irrational situation, and like I feel
right.
like you could be angry to that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Mm. How do you feel like Javier Bardem does in this role? I feel like he only really gets a handful of scenes where I feel like he's asked to do something different than just, be this confrontational, conversationalist with people.
Yeah.
There's the death scene, obviously. Um, I'm struggling to think of others. I feel like there's another big one. Um,
Um, he's good in that one sequence where, oh, what is it? Where like it's the dream sequence where he flies, and like you kind of have like this moment where he's like kind of left alone finally, and he's just kind of there on his own, and he's stopped like writing, he's not talking to anybody, he's just kind of, you get more of like, you get more of a moment with like more of his interiority, where he's just there, and he can't move, he can't go anywhere else, like he's just there, and like there's nothing else to distract him. And so that's like the moment where he finally like drifts away in his mind, and has like this fantasy where he flies and goes to the beach and is there with the lawyer.
mhm,
um and like it's not like a ultra profound sequence, but it just, to me, it's like, it's finally a moment where he's not lecturing us. It's fine, it's just like, it's
mhm,
more of like what you like, what would make more sense for the character, because he's just there and he can't do
mhm.
anything.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. Though I feel like once he's flying, we don't really get Javier Bardem. It's just the camera
No,
soaring
it
through
just
the
once,
landscape, right?
yeah, you just got the landscape, but then when he gets like to the like kind of like playing out his fantasy, which even in like his fantasy, he's still just like a know-it-all smug asshole, and you're just like, damn, man.
um, he's a know-it-all smug asshole making out with some ladies.
Dude's got women falling over him.
Which, like, I think that's maybe worth talking about. That Javier Bardem is just like a very sexy man generally, but like he in a lot of his biggest roles is like cast in these parts that are really unflattering. Like
Yeah,
in No Country for Old Men, he's got the like bowl cut comb over thing going on.
yeah,
Very, oh my gosh, sorry, we're having cat problems over here. Very pale, very gaunt looking. He just generally like is very willing to throw himself into a role where he's just very unappealing character. Um,
Yeah.
but still surrounded by babes in this one.
Trying to think, like he gets to just be like, I'm sexy and like Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
Right. He's like part of the romantic fantasy of that movie.
Yeah. But yeah, more often than not, you think of but even like a lot of his like famous American roles, like even like Skyfall, like he's just kind of a gross,
Yeah.
kind of gross, despicable villain character. Um,
And he does have kind of a unique face. He's not like a Peter Lorre type, or his face on just on a very basic level is like off-putting in a way. But it is like kind of chiseled and layered, and I don't know. It feels like he has like wisdom in in those wrinkles. Um,
he's very entertaining in Dune Part 2 when he's just like
mhm.
constantly like Timothy Chalamet will drop something and he's just like he's like
there's
Mosadib.
the Life of Brian scene
Yeah.
where he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, the gourd, no, the shoe."
Yeah. Um yeah, I don't know. Yeah, his performance in this is fine.
Yeah,
Um it feels very like uh what is the it feels very like in line with like the Kate Winslet scene from Extras where she's just like, you play a person with a disability or somebody like related to the Holocaust and you'll immediately win awards. Like that's kind of what this performance
Daniel Day
feels like.
Lewis and My Left Foot.
Yeah, like it just like this feels very much like even though it's a Spanish language movie that it was probably submitted to the Oscars, but I mean I don't think he was nominated
I
for it.
was
But
just
you're
gonna
just
look
like,
that up if it got nominated for any Oscars.
but it feels very like it feels like a very awards fair thing. Feels like
Absolutely.
it feels like something Bradley Cooper will do in a couple years to win that Oscar.
it won Best Foreign Film at the Academy Awards.
Oh, okay.
Let's see, what was it up against? One moment. It was up
I'll
against.
tell you what, The World, which I talked about in part 1, is way better.
It was not nominated. As It Is in Heaven from Sweden, The Chorus from France, Downfall from Germany, and Yesterday from South Africa.
Hmm. All I know about Downfall is it has that meme of them telling Hitler
999.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this definitely does feel like an awards picture, and is boring in like such a middle of the road way. Like
Yeah.
one movie that it reminded me of a little bit was weird that we brought him up in part one, but Darren Aronofsky's The Whale
Yeah.
was also about someone who like is kind of physically unable to move a lot or leave their house, and the whole movie kind of has a morbid sense of doom about it. That movie, I think, is fairly distasteful with how it handles its subject matter, um, but at least it's like interestingly distasteful.
Yeah.
This movie is very tasteful, but it's very boring.
Yeah.
It's so mediocre. It has no like life or verve or energy to it. We're just sitting in a room watching shot reverse shot conversations,
Yeah.
um, which is I think a bummer because one of the reasons that I wanted to do this one for the show is it's directed by Alejandro Amenabar, who made an amazing horror movie
Mhm.
in 2001, a couple years before this movie came out, called The Others, which is just so like formally confident and interesting. But I guess in a horror movie, you have to be like constantly fluctuating the audience's level of excitement and suspense. And so like there's a lot more like camera trickery that you're going to need to do. In this one, I don't really know what kind of emotion they're going for most of the time, but it's just kind of flatly delivered conversation scenes.
Well, I mean, it's simplified, and we talked about like what are we supposed to feel at the end, and I'm like, went away kind of going, I don't know, it just kind of ended, and I was like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
um, all right, well, that's the
yeah. I don't
C
know what else to
inside.
say about it.
Yeah, that's the C inside. It wasn't streaming anywhere. I'm really angry. I had to pay money for this. I'll be honest.
So true. I had to pay Jeff Bezos to watch this movie.
I decided to avoid that, and I gave Tim Cook money. So
Hmm,
I picked a different billionaire.
probably a better one.
All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at Cinematary, and on Letterbox at letterbox.com/Cinematary, where we talk about we list all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you would like to support the show, patreon.com/Cinematary, please do. Uh, we're coming up on another year of doing this, going to
Mhm.
festivals and things like that. So we always appreciate the support.
This is our 10th
Um,
year.
it is crazy. So, how about you give us money for our 10th year?
Yeah, you owe us.
We're giving you great takes. Like, man, that guy in that movie who was a quadriplegic was annoying. I'm glad he died. You don't get
Only
that.
we're brave enough to say this.
Yeah, like Blank Check Podcast ain't gonna do that for you. We do that for you. But thank you to our patrons, Cam, Ron Hayes, Tanner Huskins, Teresa Marthathi, and Tyler Chandler. We appreciate your patronage. Next week or next episode, we're going to continue our Javier Bardem series with a much more like widely known movie of his that's and that is Beautiful, which is by Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu. Which what the hell is that guy doing nowadays?
Didn't he make his like Fellini movie?
speaking of smug people,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, so we're gonna be watching that. So until then, thank y'all for listening, and we will see you next episode.
By